Students are returning to school, and teachers and administrators know a learning gap is there. What do we do about it? How do we close the gap without stressing everyone out? Today on episode 725, Turnaround Principal Rachael George tells us how.
Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis.
I want to thank Advancement Courses for sponsoring today's show. Stay tuned at the end of the show to see how you can save 20% on engaging and meaningful professional development from Advancement Courses. Today we're talking with Dr. Rachael George. She has led an outstanding Level 5 model school, is recognized by the state of Oregon, and is really a turnaround expert. And Rachael, we're really entering an interesting situation where a lot of schools already acknowledge that they think they're behind. And it looks like in the U.S., that there's going to be mandatory standardized testing. What on earth? What's your opinion?
Well, I was shocked with what came out. I'm in the state of Oregon, and we actually submitted a waiver request. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. I think just interesting times, right? I think we know that there's some potential gaps. And I think that every amazing educator out there can identify the exact student and where the gap is. And it's information that we already know. And we're super concerned about just getting kids back in the classroom and really focusing on that quality instruction that they do best. And to have to really put a standardized test in front of a kid when they first come back and we haven't seen them in over a year just causes some grave concern, I think, probably on a lot of minds of educators for sure.
Well, we're dealing with students that are traumatized. And, you know, I'm in a school that's fortunate enough to have been in person since August. That's the exception. That's not most schools. Now, you're an expert in taking a school and turning it around. I hope everybody reads your bio on the website, on the show notes. What do you plan to do? Because, you know, some students have been ghosting, and that's the term for kids that have basically put their profile up on Zoom and just really haven't engaged.
Mm-hmm. For starters, I think we need to take a deep breath, right? And we need to not panic. I don't think that we ever make great decisions when we're panicked and our lids are flipped. You know, when we started jumping into pandemic teaching last year, you know, we had a really honest conversation as an administrative group, and then also with our superintendent included, you know, and this was led by him, but also with our teachers and our entire building of like, what do we believe to be true? And prior to the pandemic, we strongly believed that academic achievement and social emotional skills come hand in hand, that you can do them together very successfully. And we knew that we had a huge challenge ahead of us, and we wanted to maintain our mission and vision as a district. So unlike some folks, we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We kept doing what we do best. We shifted and pivoted a little bit in terms of how that looked with the digital platform. But this isn't rocket science, right? Like, good teaching is good teaching. It still is great teaching. And I think that we often doubt ourselves when we're in an emergency, and it's going to be okay. It really, really is. And the strategies that we've used in the past are going to be perfect when we come back. We just now are starting to welcome kids back. We had K1 that came back last week, 2-3 today. But otherwise, we've been completely virtual. You're so lucky, Vicki, that you've been able to have kids back, because that's been a game changer. But I have to tell you, even with a CDL model, a comprehensive distance learning model, remote teaching, we do have some students that have been ghosting us, but we've also been really strategic about how we're reaching out to the families and to the students to make sure that we're monitoring them and to make sure that we're providing as much instructional support as possible. Now, are we 100%? No, and we've had a lot of conversations with staff about that, because we can get really fixated and frustrated on the one or two kids. But I encourage us to really take a step back, right? When we were face-to-face prior to a pandemic, were there one or two kids that we still struggled with to really meet or that didn't show up regularly? Chances are it's a yes. I know for us it was. And it's the same thing. It looks a little different. So we come back, and hopefully when we come out of this pandemic, knock on wood that it happens soon, right? Like, we're going to use our same go-to strategies that we've used to turn our building around. We have a really, really strong collective efficacy as an entire staff that we've spent years building. And that's that belief that really we can make an impact, a positive one on students. And wholeheartedly, our staff are going to do whatever it takes. Word of caution, we also are a huge group of go-getters. We want to make sure we don't burn ourselves out. because that's oftentimes what comes hand in hand with that. We're also going to dial in our small group instruction, our small group reading that's very individualized. It's scaffolded. It's very responsive to students and what their needs are. It's based in data. It's a team effort. We're going to continue that. The same strategies we use for active engagement that we've been using face-to-face, we've been utilizing online. A lot of our cake instructors, and those come back even when we're in our hybrid mode. Like, we still have teachers that are streaming live and teaching students live as well. And I got to tell you, that's probably one of the hardest things in the world. But we're using cake instructors in both of those circumstances, in breakout rooms and in a face-to-face model. And then also just really relying on making sure that we don't need that state testing to rely on where our students are. And let's be honest, like, how many amazing educators that they wait the whole year, right? And then they're like, oh, shock, I didn't know my kids were there. Like, nobody does that. So I think just really continuously having great sources of data and having strong instructional practices are huge.
As well as, the emotional. I tweeted out something the other day, a study that said that 61% of kids have extreme loneliness and 1 out of 3 adults. And today with one of my classes, I did an activity I've been doing for years. I call it Ask Me Anything. And I have it on a piece of paper, and they can ask me anything they want. And then they can check a box that says, keep it private, answer it to the class, but don't say my name, or answer to the class and say my name if you feel like it. It's just interesting to see the deeper introspectiveness of where kids are now, maybe even where they were a year or two ago. So how are you planning on approaching the SEL, possible trauma? And then even the kids, 30% of people who have COVID tend to have the long-term impact with fatigue and such. So how are you wrapping that into what you've been doing all along?
Mm-hmm. Well, those are amazing, great questions. They truly are. For the current present situation, we shortened our school day, but what we did was we took out some of the other ancillary items that we could live without. And we've been very focused on our reading, math, writing, and our social emotional aspects. We're still teaching our PE and our music, and we're integrating our social studies and science, but we're making sure that we hit those priority standards. And while we're doing that, we're also infusing a lot of community building activities. And I'm a strong believer that you can't build your community within your classroom through academics only, right? You have to front load when it's a low stress, low threat environment to build those trusts, the communication, the relationship. And that's something that we've been focused on day one. We have our Wednesdays off for teachers to be able to collaborate across the district, but it's also an allotted time for them to be able to reach out and provide social emotional lessons for students and to have those community building activities. They're also built in twice throughout the day where there's some real explicit time to be able to do that. We've also leveled up our support in terms of social workers and our counselor access. They're providing more one-on-one support or group sessions. And I got to tell you, the social workers, the licensed social workers have been incredible. School counselors are amazing, but I have been just in awe of some of the quality case management and tutoring and instruction that they've been able to provide and really help support students with. So that's just been phenomenal. We've also really leveled up our home visits and being able to help support families and truly understand what they're facing and to be able to really meet them where they're at.
Well, one thing that makes me smile is that you used to be a firefighter.
Uh-huh.
Do you still feel like you are?
Yes. And you know what? I did not feel like that at the elementary level. I felt like that definitely as a middle school principal. But elementary land, I got to tell you, I loved. And, I listened to your podcast during the first couple of years because it had been so long that I hadn't been at that level and I needed some great tips and you were my go-to resource. But now I'm like, ooh, this is like running and gunning again. Like things are changing every moment, just like a fire is, and that constant observation and reevaluation and having to shift and be nimble that you haven't had to as quickly respond to at the elementary level is definitely the name of the game right now, unfortunately.
So what's your advice to principals? Where do you go to now? Where can people get help? Because, there are some people that are panicking. And I'll tell you, the longest step, I've got a blog post to write that I've probably taken in my whole life. I've never been on the moon, but it was that first day of school back in August when I had to step out of my car onto the pavement. I'm not going to say it's all hype because we know it's real, and a lot of us, me included, have had COVID and don't want anybody else to get it. But there is I don't even know what to say, a haze, almost like the smoke surrounding the fire. That how do you see if there's even a fire there, because of all the smoke, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, I think you did a fantastic job, and you're right. You sometimes don't know what's in front of you, and that's the concern with when you jump in and start going super fast. And that's why you need to move forward, but you need to do it cautiously and with intentionality, right? And that's one of the things that I've appreciated about the district that I'm in right now is that, one, we didn't change our mission and vision. And then we also were really intentional about the steps we took. And we also weren't always the ones that were first out of the gate. And that's different for me because I like to be like first on scene and to be able to like do that, that fire size up and make those decisions. But I think in the case that we're in right now with the pandemic, we need to be even more intentional and we can't rush those decisions.
So Rachel, as we finish up, fill in the blank. When principals and teachers go back to school and their students start back too, I hope they don't blank.
I hope that they don't panic. Take a breath, look the students in the eyes, and remember why you're doing what you're doing. And you were called to this profession for a reason, and you're going to do amazing, amazing things.
So flip it. I hope they blank.
I hope that they love every moment of it and they cherish every moment of it, because I think that this last year showed us that you never know what you can or can't count on.
Yep. That's great advice. Dr. Rachael George, you've given us fantastic advice. This is not an easy time for any of us. This podcast, I had to go from 5 days a week to 2 days a week because I couldn't manage everything. And a lot of us have had to adjust. But part of what I've wanted to offer with my sharing on the 10-Minute Teacher is helpfulness current to the moment. And you have just done that, Rachel. And thank you and good luck as you keep bringing kids back in.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's time to plan your professional development now with advancement courses. You can choose from over 280 online graduate level PD courses in 20 subject areas that are self-paced with up to 6 months to complete. Go to advancementcourses.com/CoolCat and save 20% off each course by using the code COOL20. That's just $120 per graduate credit hour or $160 for 50 clock hours. You can also receive graduate credit through CAEP and regionally accredited university partners for continuing education requirements. Thanks Advancement Courses for sponsoring today's show. Never stop learning.